From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Monday, December 19th, 2022. I'll go ahead and tell you before I forget, no video next week. I'll be taking the week off between Christmas and New Year's just to get some rest here and recharge for the new year for 2023. So the last video forecast here for the Canadian Prairie here for the year 2022, and it is a cold one. That's what I'll tell you right up front. It's going to be a cold week. Chances for flurries and minor snow, that's just about it. Temperatures already anywhere from 20 to 30 degrees below zero across the Prairie provinces here on Monday morning. That is going to be the theme here. Overnight lows anywhere from 30, 35 below zero at times. And those are air temperatures. Again, not factoring any gusty winds here as we head through the week. So dangerously cold. Chances for some flurries. Again, some very light pockets of snow moving through parts of southern Saskatchewan and then up near the Edmonton area, Highway 16, across portions of north central Alberta. Maybe a few snowflakes falling out there, and that's again the theme for the week. No real areas of significant accumulating snow here, and I'd be surprised if much of you got more than an additional dusting or more than an inch or two. Now we'll look at the satellite as we head through Monday morning. What I want to point out here is a couple things. Fast jet stream flow coming in here across the Pacific into the Pacific Northwest. You can also kind of make out on the leading edge of that a little disturbance right here, a little swirl within the flow. That's the little system that's kicking off the very light flurries here this morning. But then check out right here. You see this kind of like green fibery cloud bands, and that's actually where we've got high pressure southerly flow coming in over the top of. If I draw your attention to kind of the purple shading here, that's our Arctic air mass. So we've got warm air advection in advance of an incoming trough here, drawing relatively warmer air up over the top of that Arctic air. So now if I take the drawings off here, just kind of, not creating any significant weather, but just something kind of interesting, a little funky that caught my eye here as a meteorologist who looks at these things every day. Just that southerly flow, that relatively warmer air coming over a bitterly cold Arctic air mass that, again, is going to be set in place across Western Canada through at least Friday, if not longer, as you head off to the east. Now, the precipitation forecast over the next 4 days, again, not much to talk about. Flurries at times, much more significant snow expected to occur south of the U.S.-Canada border with a much more significant storm system on the leading edge of that Arctic air as it spills into the central U.S. I, too, down in Illinois in the Midwest United States, will be feeling this bitterly cold air by the end of the week. Total snow accumulation by Thursday afternoon, again, very minor. We're talking 5 centimeters or less where snow does accumulate. Compare the NAM on the left, the European on the right, very similar picture. And as we take it all the way through the weekend, not much more to talk about. Again, significant snow being watched here across parts of the upper Midwest, the northern plains. Maybe a little system that runs along the U.S. border here late week, bringing a few, centimeters of snow here, but still talking about relatively minor. The bigger story, the much more significant story, going to be the cold temperatures that linger through the end of the week. Thanks to this trough that's parked right here. Again, ridging west, ridging east. The cold air has nowhere to go, but right into the prairie and then eventually into the central United States. As we just animate this, you'll watch this trough slide into the central U.S. As it does that, it's replaced by a ridge across the western half of North America. That's going to allow our temperatures to rebound here. So 4 or 5 days of bitterly cold temperatures. By the time we get to the weekend into early next week, we'll start to warm up at least slightly. But as I pause this at the very end of this loop here, getting into, again, this would be, let me drag this out to the end of that loop. It reset to the beginning. There we go. If I'm looking at December 28, 29, 30, the last few days of December, this suggests very strong jet stream flow coming across the Pacific, perhaps bringing us a reignition. I'm kind of making up a weather word here, of the pattern here, just kind of amping it back up. Maybe that's when we start talking about more in the way of accumulating snow making its way into the prairie. I'm going to kick that toward the back of December, maybe early into January. As I flip from the height anomalies to the wind speeds, you can see there the end of December, early January, potentially active once again against across the prairie provinces. But until then, we're talking about light snow, flurries, very minor accumulations. Again, the precipitation forecast, this would be as we get into the end of December, potentially bringing in a much more active storm track. Of course, specifics on that going to be little to none at this range. As I just animate the next 10 days, your precipitation forecast, you can see the much more significant storm system that ducks in across the central U.S. and then runs up into the northeast U.S., parts of Ontario, Quebec. Very high winds, significant snow accumulations possible across a wide swath of the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the northeast U.S., into parts of Ontario and Quebec. Just going to be cold, maybe at times windy, with some very light snow across the prairie. You can see as we get toward the end of the loop, though, as you just watch this thing finish, all of the storm systems right here as we get toward the end of that loop, late December, potentially into early January. That's when I would watch for maybe a more active storm track, maybe getting some more snow into the Prairie. Again, the bigger story though, going to be the cold. It sticks around 4 or 5 days as we get into the weekend. Finally get that colder air to drop into the Midwest. It'll be my problem. At the same time, you'll get those warmer temps right there as we get into the weekend early next week. Start to moderate those temperatures and break out of the bitterly cold temperature pattern, potentially even warming a few degrees above average as we get into early next week. Here's what that looks like, your 10-day high and low temperature forecast for a few of our select cities. Calgary, bitterly cold air in place till Friday. Above freezing potentially as we get into next week. Looking similar in Edmonton, a little colder though, relatively speaking, but the same look. Same thing here in Saskatoon. Look at those lows. -33, -35 on Wednesday and Friday mornings. Air temperatures, those highs in the afternoon, still 20 below zero. This is Regina over the next few days. Same thing, 20 below is going to be about as warm as you get through Saturday. And then Winnipeg, as you make your way off to the east, the cold lingers a little bit longer. Still seeing that forecast warm up though, that moderation of temperatures as we get into early next week, the last days of December. Have a great week, a wonderful holiday if you're celebrating it. Again, I will talk to you a couple weeks from now. Taking next week off. I'll talk to you here at the beginning of January.